What's up, friends? Welcome to Web3 Academy, a place for entrepreneurs, creators, and marketers to explore and learn how to use Web3 to transform business models and create thriving communities. Enjoy this next episode.
All right, welcome to Web3 Academy. It is the Tuesday weekly spotlight, and today we are spotlighting David Myhal. Super excited to have David on the podcast today. David is an expert in everything data and analytics on the blockchain, and he's going to be sharing with us what he's been working on. He was one of the founders of CryptoFees, which I'm sure all of our listeners have spent time on, and has many other pages within there: OpenOrgs, Money Printer, ETH Burned. I won't even list them all. David, you can tell us about them. And more recently, he started building a DAO, CryptoStats, which we're super excited to dive into because it's all focused on making trustworthy crypto metrics available to all, which is really fitting in with the ethos of Web3 and making everything permissionless and available to the masses. David, welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
We're excited to have you too, my man. Well, I gave a brief intro, but you can probably tell your story better than I can. So why don't we just start out with you telling us a bit of your story?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, my name's David. I'm a software engineer. Been kind of working in the crypto space since last cycle. I got it like around 2017, 2018 was when I really started diving headfirst into the space, and I love it more and more. Every day, it's just the coolest industry to work in. You work on cool technology, you meet kind of really cool people, and I mean, it's just the craziest stuff happens too. It's exciting every day. So yeah, so in terms of the stuff I've worked on all sorts of stuff throughout the years. I've kind of done a few independent projects. I've done a bunch of work for different DAOs, big and small. And the main thing I'm kind of focusing on now is as you mentioned, Jay, CryptoFees and especially CryptoStats, which is kind of the project that has evolved out of that. So yeah, that's my main focus now. I don't know if you want me to kind of give the full background on that, or.
Yeah, why don't you dive deeper into kind of starting CryptoFees, why you started that first of all. I'd love to just kind of to understand that. What's interesting is these are all just like free web pages for anyone to use in the space. So like, where does that come from? Why did you get into analytics on the blockchain? And then I think we'll dive a lot deeper into analytics because I think that's a super interesting conversation.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll start by kind of rewinding a couple of years to, kind of before the pandemic hit, before, DeFi and everything really started kicking off. We had a lot of these DeFi primitives that we have today, like, MakerDAO exists. We had like kind of decentralized stablecoins and lending. We had Aave and Compound. We had Uniswap, of course. So there was, I'd been kind of working in the space and seeing these really amazing projects coming up, but they hadn't really gotten like the mind share yet. People didn't really know what they were. Most people weren't thinking about crypto at all. And if they were just thinking like, oh, there's like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and, Bitcoin Gold and, and there's Ethereum, but everyone just thought of Ethereum as like, oh, it's probably just like it's just another version of Bitcoin. And so when people looked at kind of like metrics, the metrics usually kind of reflected that perspective of the ecosystem. Even today, the main metric people look at is market cap. So which coin is the biggest, which coin is the smallest, and they would look at other trading metrics. What is the trading volume of something? What's the volatility? What's the unit price is still like kind of a big one. Like, is it $1? Is it $30,000? Stuff like that. But the cool thing as like DeFi started growing is you started to, have a lot of these metrics that, a lot of them are kind of more comparable to traditional metrics in traditional business. So, the metric that kind of we got started with and built everything around is revenue. And you can look at any company and you can look at their revenue. People who work in traditional finance, they're very comfortable looking at revenue and profit and doing kind of discounted cash flow models to evaluate the valuation of something. So I did think it was interesting that, or I felt like people were really missing out on how much cool stuff there was in crypto because they assumed everything was just something like Bitcoin, that was just some new asset that was not backed by anything, didn't have any valuation against it. So I felt that way for a while. And I think kind of the thing that got me to build crypto fees was I saw a tweet from Hayden Adams, who's the creator and CEO of Uniswap, where he was talking about the fees that Uniswap was accruing. So if you don't know, when you make a trade on Uniswap, there's you buy and sell some coin, and a small amount of that trade goes to the liquidity providers, the people who have deposited assets into this pool. And the amount of fees that were being paid was actually quite high. And he had this tweet where he showed, there's a lot of people paying transaction fees, maybe the tens of thousands of dollars to transact on Bitcoin. Ethereum was also pretty high, maybe $10,000, dollars or something. And then the next was Uniswap, was also had quite a bit. And then he showed, I think the tweet had basically said oh, then there's 400, or how many hot dogs, something about the price of hot dogs, and then all these other blockchains saying Bitcoin Cash and Litecoin and Ripple and stuff like that, which all had tens of dollars in daily fees. Now, of course, people at that time who probably liked those projects would go, oh, look, the fees are so low on Litecoin. But when you kind of look at this aggregate fee metric, you go, there's actually nobody's paying very much to use this blockchain. And the great thing about this metric is it doesn't just work for blockchains. You can take something like Uniswap and you can compare the revenue of Uniswap, how much are people paying to use Uniswap against how much are people paying to use Bitcoin, how much are they paying to use Ethereum. So I saw that tweet. I thought this was a really, really great metric that was kind of, it intuitively made sense to me. That's the ones that are useful, Bitcoin is useful, Ethereum is useful, Uniswap is useful. I mean, personally, I don't think, Litecoin is that useful. And I felt like those numbers kind of reflected that. So, it took an hour or two, and I just built this really, really simple website that just kind of showed those fees. And I still have a screenshot. It looks pretty similar to the site today. And I just kind of built it for myself. And then I think, maybe a month later, Uniswap fees were really, really high. I don't know if something looked interesting to me. So I just decided to tweet it out and see if anyone else thought it was interesting. And the site really caught on. People started really sharing it a lot, posting screenshots of it on Twitter. And yeah, it really surprised me because this was, again, something I just built for fun for myself. And, I kind of started going, well, if maybe I'll keep working on the site. I'll add more. I added a bunch of other protocols. I would add, the other exchanges. A couple months later, SushiSwap came out. We could look at SushiSwap versus Uniswap. And I started making other sites. So I made one that was how much is being settled. It was basically how much value is being transferred on Bitcoin, how much value is being transferred on Ethereum. Again, at that point, people were surprised that Ethereum was flipping Bitcoin at some points in time because they thought, oh, Bitcoin we use way more. What were the other ones I made at that time? Well, I kind of started making these more and more info sites to try to show metrics that I felt were undervalued and could communicate a point. So, market cap, that's a metric that people aren't really, everyone already knows about that metric. So I'm not going to do things like that. And I wanted to do one where you could look at it and you could really you didn't need to be a data person or, an analyst to understand kind of what it meant. If you look at crypto fees, you go, people are paying to use these protocols. And that kind of intuitively just gives you an idea of how valuable are these protocols? So yeah, that's kind of the crypto fee side was building that out.
What's really interesting is that all of this data is fed into these sites, and it's basically real time, right? In the traditional world, if you want to look at revenue of a business, you got to wait I don't know, every quarter for them to put out their numbers. But what you kind of unlocked is you can just literally go and refresh and see the revenues that Ethereum is making every single day, or Bitcoin or Uniswap or whatever. I feel like blockchain has a ton of data, and I don't really understand it or know what all the data is yet. I think you're going to have a much better idea of this. Can you just share like what data is possible to get out of these blockchains? Like I understand fees, that makes sense, and transfers. What else is there, just for those who are not really aware? What all can you track and yeah.
I mean, I think that's the really cool part is what you can track is pretty limitless. Like any transaction that happens on chain, you can, any data you can derive from it. Like it's pretty easy to derive from it. So, the ones we track are, fee revenue, as I mentioned. You can look at like the APY of like lending markets and kind of yield generating protocols. You can look at how much are people, what are the amounts that people are moving, what are the amounts that they're trading, what are the amounts that they're sending, things like that. But yeah, you can track pretty much anything. And as you mentioned, the really cool thing about crypto is that this stuff is all out in the public. So yeah, as you said, like traditionally you'd have to wait for like a quarterly earnings report for a company to come out and say like, this is what we tell you our numbers are. On crypto, the data is just there. The flip side of it is in traditional, businesses, like the business is basically compelled by, like the SEC to put out a report that they're kind of giving their stamp of approval on. In crypto, like there's no Bitcoin company, there's no Ethereum company that's going to come out with their quarterly earnings report. So
that's bankless,
it's kind of
Ethereum.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, but it's basically up to the community for someone to go, oh, I think it's valuable for people to know this information. I'm going to try to aggregate this data, and I'm also going to try to build trust in the community because, if you're a website like mine or Bankless or something like that, like you can kind of just lie. If a quarterly earnings report comes out and you lie on it, like you're going to go to jail. With crypto, people lie about stuff in crypto all the time. So that trust is a really important thing to build up around the data.
One of the interesting ones you have on the site, I don't know what it's called, but like DAO's treasury. And it's like, you can just go and see all the different DAOs and see like how big their treasury is. That to me is super, super interesting because it's like, you can literally go and see how much these companies, if you want to call them a company, are essentially saving at any given time. And it makes the whole, economics of business just completely open to anyone and everyone, which to me is super, super interesting.
Yeah. So that website is called openorgs.info. And that site started in a really similar way to like crypto fees. Like I saw a tweet that was about Uniswap, where at some point someone's like, do people realize Uniswap has like an $11 billion treasury? Like that's an insane amount of money. I can't remember if it must be billion. Yeah. And again, like if DAOs are kind of these like future companies in a sense, you want to know kind of like people talk a lot about how Apple has this massive balance sheet, that they have just a ton of like cash and other assets on their balance sheet. And that's, a really interesting asset for a company to have. But nobody was talking about that. These DAOs had kind of emerged, and suddenly DAOs have so much money that they're bigger than a lot of businesses. They're bigger than a lot of like venture capital funds, that they have this capital that they can deploy. So yeah, it was the same idea. I kind of put together a simple website so that people could kind of see that and talk about it, and also to kind of break down like what's in these treasuries is, and this is something we could actually do a bit better at showing, but like, a lot of like Uniswap's treasury, yeah, they had like $11 billion, but it's $11 billion of Uni tokens, which means it's not actually $11 billion because you flood the market. Like usually when you spend money out of a treasury, if it's just some token, people are going to sell it for dollars, for ETH or something. So you basically start selling $11 billion worth of Uni tokens, like it's not going to be $11 billion. Going to zero, yeah. But you can see some of these organizations have pretty well diversified treasuries. They have stable coins, they have ETH, they have wrapped Bitcoin. Some of them even have, like Yearn had a bunch of debt for a while that they got a little over a year ago. There was some hack. Someone stole a bunch of money from Yearn, and the DAO basically decided they were going to like reimburse users. They were going to take a bunch of YFI tokens, put it in MakerDAO, and draw a bunch of DAI out of that and give that DAI back to the users who had been hacked. So now you have a protocol that has debt. They have assets, they have liabilities and debt. Like this is we're starting to get kind of complex balance sheets, just like any business has. So
I'm really
if we can
excited
kind of show all that, that's interesting.
For when nation states or governments start to use the blockchain, and now we can openly see their debts and their spending and their treasury. That'll be really cool.
Well, speaking of, I mean, we're kind of, as of a couple of weeks ago, the Ukrainian government is starting to use crypto a bit more. I'm sure a lot of people probably heard that they, of course, as this war broke out in Ukraine, the Ukrainian government kind of posted a Bitcoin address and Ethereum address and said, look, if you'd like to contribute, just send crypto to these addresses. They got tons of money. I know it was like over $50 million, which is more than there's more than the UN sent, more than most countries sent. And I even saw that they, so of course they're using a lot of this money for kind of, I think they said they're not using it on weapons, but they're using it on like defense purchases. Right. And I think they said a lot of their suppliers were willing to accept crypto because it just makes things much smoother. They probably saw, oh, here's a government that's got a lot of money. If we, just open like a corporate Coinbase account, they can send us money like today and we can make a sale. So now we have a government that's not only receiving money in crypto, but they're sending money in crypto. And, I haven't looked at the chain myself, but theoretically that's all kind of public and viewable. So that's super cool.
You're going to need to make a web page that sort of tracks the money of Ukraine and what they're doing and what they're buying. So like, sorry, are you going to say something else?
I would say like it's a new website, like Crypto Nation States or something like that to track.
Yeah. So, okay, most of this data is like value data, right? So like, where's the money moving? Where's the money accumulating, et cetera? As marketers ourselves and as entrepreneurs, we look a lot about like user data. That's what I really care about. I love user data. Is that something you've tapped into, or like, is that even possible yet with blockchains? I feel like there might be something there with like wallets and tracking what's happening with users' wallets and maybe what apps they're using or assets inside of it. I don't know. But is this an area you've explored yet?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. A lot of people will ask about things like, which blockchain has the most transactions, or, the most wallets and things like that. And there's certainly like worthwhile metrics to track, but the ones that I've kind of tended to really resonate with are the ones that are more financial, because they seem very, you can't fake money, right? Like the amount people are paying, $10 million a day to use Ethereum, and most of that money is just getting burned. It's getting destroyed. Like, there's no blockchain that can really fake that unless they have $10 million that they're just willing to light on fire. And that's just one day. Whereas like number of transactions, again, I think like number of transactions on a blockchain I'm sure you can derive some interesting information from it, but the blockchain that has the most transactions is just going to be the one that has the most block space. So it's going to be Solana, or it's going to be Nano or something like that. I kind of compared it to like, if you're trying to evaluate blockchains and you're looking at which one has the most transactions, that feels to me like looking at comparing stores by which one sells the most things. Like the store that sells the most things is probably like a dollar store where they sell, pieces of candy by the piece for a couple cents. And the one that sells the least things is going to be like a car store where they only sell, one car a day, but that car is worth, $30,000. So yeah, there's definitely a lot. I mean, there's infinite metrics you can track, but that's kind of why I've kind of tended to lean towards the more financial ones, because they just, really resonate with me and make a lot of sense. But yeah, I'm certainly open to kind of to other metrics about users and wallets and stuff like that, if this makes sense.
One day. Okay, so you've made all these websites, and now you're looking to sort of form this into a DAO or create something bigger. I want to talk about the DAO, but first, maybe to sort of wrap up the analytics side, unless Jay, you have any more questions, can you sort of like zoom out and talk to us to like, what do analytics look like on a blockchain? I don't know, 5-10 years from now, when like everyone is using it for everything. Like, what do you think? And I don't know if you've thought about this stuff yet. This is the kind of things that I like to do, but like, where do you think this goes, and like, what's going to be possible, or how does this like change the way we think about business or e-commerce or whatever? But any insight into that of just like where this looks in 10 years from now, let's say?
I mean, for one thing, I think the whole data ecosystem around crypto is going to be just so much more massive than it is today. Because if you think of any other industry, especially financial industries, like data is such a big part of it. There are whole companies, there are, so many people whose job is like just looking at Wall Street, looking at the stock market and deriving data from that. And now we have an industry where the data is we have way more data because the data is all open and public, as we said earlier. And there's some sites tracking data, there's some projects tracking it, but I think there's so much room for it to grow, both in terms of there will be companies that are providing data, kind of to end users. I think there's a lot to grow in like the protocol space. We'll talk a bit about kind of what we're doing, but we depend a lot on protocols like the Graph, which is an indexing service that kind of combs through all the data and can kind of like create new data based on the actual on-chain data. So I think that's a space that's going to grow a lot. And tools, there's things like Dune Analytics, which lets you kind of write SQL queries on all this data. I think you can kind of look at each of these spaces and go, a lot of parts of the data ecosystem in crypto, there's like one or two companies, providing some service. I think 5 years from now, it's going to be a very big, very competitive ecosystem. And we're hoping to have a big role in that.
Super cool. Jay, any other questions you have on analytics, or do you want to dive into the DAO?
No, let's dive into the DAO. I'm super excited to hear more about crypto stats.
Awesome. Cool. So so as you said, I kind of like built a bunch of these websites, had kind of gathered a bunch of data, was working with projects all the time because, projects are coming to me going, hey, like we want to get on crypto fees, stuff like that. And also so a lot of my time is going into just working with projects that want to get listed. And there's also a bunch of people who are coming to me and going like, they're either going, hey, can you like show data in this way? Can you make a graph like this or a chart like this or something? Or some projects are going like, hey, can you make an API because we want to show this data on our website, on our app or something like that. So I kind of started to realize like the data itself was like kind of really like the most valuable thing that we had tapped into. Like it wasn't this really simple website that's just like a very simple table. Like anybody can build one of those. The thing that's hard is like looking at all these different protocols, and they all, if you just pick one metric like fee revenue, they all generate fees in different ways. They all kind of, the on-chain data to see the fees is very different. So it's a lot of work to just kind of aggregate that. And, there's a few sites that are showing metrics, and every website is like doing all the same work. They're all trying to scrape all this data and process it and aggregate it and stuff like that. And this would be something that'd be useful if there was just like one set of data that anybody could use, that anybody could tap into. And, on one hand, like if you're a DeFi protocol and you want to get your data into the ecosystem so people could see it, you could just put it in one place instead of working with 10 different teams. And on the other hand, like if you're, there's a lot of really great data visualization people or people who have really cool data websites. For those people, like they should be focused on, how do I communicate data to users? How do I present it in a way that people will understand it? They shouldn't be worried about like, oh, a new DEX just launched. Now I have to write more code to get this new DEX. So that's kind of what we decided to, that's where crypto stats came from, was the idea of, we already had all this data for crypto fees for a bunch of these websites. What if we could make this like kind of one shared repository where anybody could contribute data to it and anybody could view that data from it? And hopefully this data library would grow and grow over time as this like shared public good, until, the goal is for every website to, every data website, every data project to be using this data. And of course that means, every DeFi project, every blockchain, whatever, is going to be incentivized to make sure that that one place has accurate data. So that's kind of the goal and what we're trying to build. And we're especially trying to do it in, this is what I think the thing is really interesting, is we're not trying to do this as like a company or as a, like a free API or free database. We're trying to do it as a decentralized protocol so that, you mentioned Bankless. One idea they talk about a lot on Bankless is the protocol sync thesis, which is like, if you're like a decentralized protocol, those tend to like sync down the tech stack, and because people build on top of them, right? If you build a company on top of Ethereum, like Ethereum's not going anywhere. Ethereum's going to be around for a while. If you build a company on top of like Twitter, that company might do really well, and then someday Twitter might just like turn off their API, and or if there might be as we were talking about like kind of the geopolitics going on today, like a lot of websites are getting blocked, stuff like that. If you build on protocols that aren't neutral and aren't like resilient, your company can just kind of fall apart one day if that gets pulled out from under you. So the goal was to build this data protocol and build it in a way that it is kind of as trustless and decentralized as possible, because that's what's really going to get people to build on top of it and to trust it.
I love that. The protocol sync thesis is so damn important. I think not enough people in this industry really understand that. Like the point in crypto and what we're doing with blockchains is to create decentralized things so that they can't be shut down. And this industry is just too focused on just like, I don't know, making money right now. So they just don't quite understand that. But that's like one of the best takeaways that I got from Bankless, I feel like, was the protocol sync thesis. So I love that you just brought that up. So you're going to build this Crypto Stats as a DAO rather than a business. What makes you choose that the DAO way, and I guess talk about like how that's different than building it as a business?
Yeah, so we're building as a DAO. Again, kind of the goal of it is to be not really to be like a profitable company. I mean, of course, we'll need kind of revenue to pay for our expenses, but for this to be a public good that everybody can, extract value from and can provide value to. And so the best way to do that, like, and I guess the traditional world, you can do like kind of a nonprofit organization to do those things, but providing public goods is something that crypto is really good at, because crypto is all about kind of creating these new incentive models, these new systems that can provide something and provide an economic model where people just want to contribute to it. Like you could say Bitcoin and Ethereum, those are both public goods. They provide a service. It doesn't, other than like transaction fees, it doesn't really cost anything to use them, but there's an incentive mechanism that has, nodes, miners and validators that are providing security and nodes that are providing access and things like that. So those are, I think, kind of very simple public goods. The crypto space is moving towards exploring more complex public goods. I think I'd put us in that category of, it's not something simple like a blockchain where you just need to run a computer. Like Crypto Stats needs people to be writing code, to kind of contribute to this thing. But and the other side is that this is the only way something like this can scale. One of the main benefits that we provide is that when you have like a shared public good, you have a bunch of people contributing to it. Those things can, if you build it right, they can grow and they can scale so much better than any company can. Like one kind of comparison I like to look at is Wikipedia. Like if you go back a couple decades, kind of before the internet was much of a thing, and you go, okay, how do you build like a really comprehensive encyclopedia that has as much information as possible in it? And everyone would say, well, you build a big company, you become like the encyclopedia company, you become like Encyclopedia Britannica, and you just hire a lot of writers. That's kind of like the brute force way of just like hire more writers and you can write more pages in your encyclopedia. But kind of the crazy idea of the internet was to have something like Wikipedia, where you go, oh, well, just make it so anybody can write an encyclopedia article. And funny enough, that like works way better than a company like Encyclopedia Britannica. You just get all these people coming together and self-organizing, and they build this, Wikipedia, which is probably one of the greatest accomplishments of mankind. It's this one source of all the world's information. So yeah, with Crypto Stats, like there's going to be more and more crypto protocols. Like it's just going to go exponential. If you're one data company and you're trying to like write the new code for every DeFi app that launches, you're never going to be able to keep up. But if you can build a system, like if, there was some guy who sat down and built Wikipedia and then everyone contributed to it. If we can build something kind of like Wikipedia, where anybody can come in and go like, this is my favorite DeFi protocol. I want them to be on crypto fees, to be in Crypto Stats. They have the tools that they can really easily build it. Then that's how we can kind of scale to something that, is much bigger than any, individual entity could build.
I love the focus on the public good, because that's such a big part of the crypto story that I don't think is being told enough. Right? There's so much focus on Web3, on the money making, and lots of people talking about being rug pulled and FUD, and talking about, in degen is, a word that gets thrown around a lot, but I really love, the regenerative focus of crypto and the opportunity to make the world a better place. So hats off to you, David. I'd love to hear about, just take us to the sort of the origins of CryptoStats in terms of, one thing that I do think is difficult about starting a DAO is organizing humans, right? And I think we naturally have in our mind that, well, if I'm going to do work, then I should be compensated for my work, right? So we're flipping the model a little bit here with DAOs of, coming together and giving work and giving time without necessary compensation in the beginning. So can you just walk us through, like, how did CryptoStats start in the beginning? Who was on the team? How did you guys form? What were the steps you took?
Yeah, so one thing that, first of all, it's a tough problem, right? To bring people together to find the incentive models, especially if you're starting out without, like, CryptoStats isn't some like venture-backed company. We don't have like a big pool of money that we can just hire people with. One great thing about it was starting with something that is already like a valuable public good. So we had kind of CryptoFees, the website, and CryptoStats was kind of just an extension of that. Like, it was the way to feed data in. A lot of people came to the community just because they said, like, I want my favorite app to be on CryptoFees. There was one guy who's like a good member of our community who was really big into the the Abracadabra community. And so he kind of like hopped in our Discord, was like, yeah, like, how do I get Abracadabra? And we kind of like gave him some directions on how to write the code, how to build the adapter that we call to, he was motivated by helping Abracadabra. He was part of that community. He wanted Abracadabra's data to be out there. And through this process,
by his
like,
bags.
Exactly.
We're focused on regen here. Come on.
Well, I mean, that could be a great way to help public goods. Is like, we were talking about the Ukraine thing, and like, what was it? Ukraine was like, here's our address, like, just donate money to us. And then like a day or two later, they're like, there's going to be an airdrop if you donate to us. And you saw the amount of donations just spike off what was going to, like, obviously be like a stupid valueless airdrop. But like, if you can leverage like degens and to do something good for the world, like, I don't see the problem in that. So yeah, again, like, having something that's already valuable and that people already see the value in contributing to, I think that makes it a little bit easier to bootstrap, as opposed to a lot of DAOs will kind of just start with an idea and like hope people can come to build that idea. So we're a bit ahead of that. And yeah, again, at some point we'll have, a token. And one cool thing about crypto is to kind of like, token issuance can be really useful for bootstrapping network effects. I saw someone talking about how, like social networks have this problem of, big network effect problem. Like, you kind of can't build a social network because, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, they're not valuable because they're like great pieces of software. They're valuable because all your friends are there. And then you have this big problem when you try to start something new, that if something's only valuable because a lot of people are there, there's no incentive to use it until everybody's already there. With, kind of leveraging the speculative nature of crypto, you can kind of make a new project that has a token, and people are incentivized to use, say, a Web3 social network, even if their friends aren't on it, because they're like, maybe they bought some bags or they got an airdrop or something. So the early adopters do get rewarded for being an early adopter of something. As time goes on, let's say it's successful, and the token appreciates, whatever. The early adopters are rewarded. As time goes on, there's less and less of a reward, but it just becomes inherently valuable in and of itself. So now you don't need early adopters. You don't need token incentives because you've got a lot of people. So I think that's another kind of mechanism that you can use to bootstrap any DAO, any project in crypto, is like, the speculative nature of crypto lets you bootstrap the beginning, the growth phase of a project. And it's not something that's sustainable. It's not something that can last forever. But if you leverage it right, you can build something that's big enough and valuable enough that it can exist on its own, even once those incentives run out.
How did you, so, I mean, I guess you already have a decent following on Twitter. You have, I mean, the site that's super popular. Is that how you made your community so far? Like without a token, because you haven't launched a token yet. Like one of the things that I find most people are struggling with is like, how do I build up my community so that I can launch my NFT or my token, whatever. What was it that worked for you to like get this community involved and like engaged and actually like active and working on this pre-token?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's like the $1 million question of like, how do you build a community? Yeah, some of it was, again, people were already liked the site. They already liked some of the stuff we're doing. So we were able to kind of just get some people by just talking about that, or a lot of the community comes together, as I mentioned, like to contribute to it. They want to get projects listed on it. And some of it's just trying to engage with the type of people that make sense in your community. We have weekly calls where we, these days we're talking a bit more about the DAO, but a lot of the calls we just get together and we just talk about crypto and DeFi and which projects are doing well and which aren't. Yeah, and the people who, we're a data project, so the people that we want in our community are people who like kind of like digging into the nitty-gritty of, what indicators, which metrics show that a protocol is doing well and stuff. So like, let's build some cool stuff, but let's also like hang out and just talk about like, what's your favorite project and how are they doing on the fee revenue charts or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, those are kind of the things we've done so far, but certainly like growing as a community is still something that we're trying to figure out how to do and how to get more people involved. So yeah, I think that's something that every DAO and community is working on.
Right.
And so you started the community off the back of crypto fees and these other free sources, and then you started these weekly calls. Did the idea for creating a DAO just pop out of one of these weekly calls? Was it something that you kind of came up with on your own or with somebody else? Like can you sort of trace the origin?
I mean, the calls definitely started. I mean, for a while, like this whole project was like a side project to me. Like, I built crypto fees and stuff like just for something fun. I was working on other stuff. So there was only like one point when I kind of realized like, oh, actually, I think I can build something really interesting and useful out of this, which a DAO is like a big part of that whole thing. They went, okay, I need to start like engaging with the community. I kind of like built like a small community by accident. Like, eventually I made like a Telegram group because people wanted to be in a Telegram group. So I had put like very minimal effort into the community side. Then I was kind of like, well, no, I need to like actively start getting people involved. So that's kind of when we started doing the community calls. But yeah, most of the plans were already there at that point. But a lot of the stuff on the community call is like, we'll chat about the websites and people go, oh, it'd be great if we could kind of show a chart that does this. We could do something like that. So you get a lot of ideas, contributions out of those calls just by kind of talking to people, hearing what they're interested in.
It's interesting as I hear this, people talk about DAOs as like they're completely community driven, and you need the community to start everything, to do everything. I have this feeling that like the best way to do it is like you need the one leader that goes and builds something first, and like people sort of kind of get excited about that, and then it's like then they start to contribute and help, because not everybody is a entrepreneurial leader like the Elon Musk that's going to just go and create everything. And if you bring 1,000 people together and go, okay, what should we start? Probably things don't really get done. But if one person takes the lead and starts the business or starts the product or the public good, a bunch of like, oh, that's really cool, and they start giving their feedback. That to me is the best way to form a community. I don't know if you see that, but it looks like that's kind of what you did.
Yeah, I think kind of there's like some misconception around DAOs that they're supposed to be like very flat, like very like no roles, like everybody just kind of like puts in their part and you build something out of that. I think we've also seen a lot of DAOs that have completely failed, like trying to follow that model. So,
right.
What makes a DAO to me is that it's, everything is, or not everything, but as much as possible is open and transparent, and that anybody can just join at any time. You don't need to like apply to join, at least kind of like the entry level. But, humans need like some structure to organize under. You need leaders, you need teams and groups and things like that. So like I think a lot of DAOs have learned the hard way that trying to be totally open and flat, like I'm sure there's a couple examples of it being successful, but overall I think those are gonna like not do well. So yeah, for ours, I'm definitely like me, along with kind of my co-founders and a couple of core parts of our team are kind of like leading the project. We're happy to do that, but again, it's not something that we can do alone. So I think it's kind of our job to at least kind of set the vision and the direction and do some of the core parts of it, and then also to try to engage the community and get them to to build out the rest of it and to be the important contributors to it.
So I know that you've been a part, so I mean that you're starting this DAO, you haven't launched a token there yet, but I know you have been involved in a lot of DAOs that do have tokens. Bankless DAO, I think I don't know, did you write the code for it, or you were a part of
I wrote
launch?
Yeah, I helped launch it. I wrote some of the code for it. So I haven't been super involved in Bankless DAO since its launch, but before launch, David Hoffman reached out to Wild. I was like, hey, we're looking at doing this DAO. You interested? And Bankless DAO was definitely a really big inspiration for CryptoStats to kind of see something go from just a bunch of passionate people to seeing the community kind of taking off and figuring out products to build, directions to take it and things like that. Definitely inspired me to can we do something similar? Bankless DAO is very focused around communicating, kind of bringing people into crypto, helping them understand it. And can we do kind of what they've already done, but do it for data? And even we've talked with Bankless DAO a bunch of even working with them to have them build some data websites. We give the data, stuff like that. So I think Bankless DAO is a great kind of success story for DAOs like that.
Yeah, completely agree. Is there anything, so I mean, the big question everyone has is how do I set up my tokenomics? How many tokens do I launch? How do I distribute it? How do I do all this stuff? So I guess two questions here, anything that stood out to you in the way that Bankless DAO did it, or other DAOs you've been a part of? And then what's your plan, or maybe it's very all over the place right now, but what's your idea, or what are the kind of things you might do for CryptoStats DAO?
In terms of tokenomics?
In tokenomics, yeah.
Yeah, so the tokenomics stuff, I mean, I'll say we've thought about it a bunch. We have a bunch of ideas, but right now that's not the focus is not kind of tokenomics or anything like that. The focus will be just kind of getting the community involved. One thing that I did really like about Bankless, I'm not sure if other projects had done this first, but the way Bankless DAO launched is they just kind of airdropped the token to the community. They didn't take any themselves. There was no, just like Bankless DAO, we don't have investors. A lot of projects launch and it's 75% of the tokens go to VCs and co-founders and stuff like that. It's none of that. But we'll launch, and then obviously we will want some tokens for kind of the team that's built it and stuff. So to do a Genesis proposal where you basically you launch the DAO, but it's someone else's DAO, and then you come to the DAO and go look, we've already kind of contributed a lot to this ecosystem. We have a lot of plans to continue further. Here's a proposal of how we think we can do it, and we would kind of a vested allocation of some of these tokens for that. So I think the cool thing about that is it's you're setting the expectation with the community up front. You're not forcing the community to accept your terms. You're kind of presenting the community with some terms, and if the community says, oh, we don't we want to refine kind of what some of your responsibilities or what you want to do are, or you're asking for too many tokens or something like that, that can kind of get negotiated with the community. And to me, that feels much more fair and much more you're the creators of the DAO are kind of engaging with the community even from the outset. They're not kind of forcing any terms upon the DAO. So I like that idea a lot, and we're gonna do something very similar.
It's so interesting. So they just launched all the tokens, took 0, and then we're like, hey guys, can we grab 10%, please? We want to do more work. That's scary, but I love that actually. It's very fair, and it makes sense. I can see that being kind of the norm for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how you could definitely look at it and go, oh, it's basically the same thing as just taking the tokens, because it's well, who's going to say no to that? But I do think that there is some kind of nuance there of the community is probably not going to say no, but they might ask you to tweak it. They might say, we want this to be a little bit different, and and it at least kind of establishes again that the community did kind of consent to the creator's role in that ecosystem. So yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, and even just by giving them the opportunity to have their say, it's incredible what that does for buy-in, right? I think that one thing that is so interesting is, and you sort of alluded to this earlier, David, is I think a lot of people have this misconception of DAOs that there's something like completely different, but really it's just a new way to operate a business, right? It is still a business in the end, right? And what you need when you have a business is you need all your members to be bought in to what you're doing, right? And your mission and your vision, and you need them to believe in the leaders. And so you're just taking a different approach at achieving the same thing that a business would look to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess one thing I'll kind of add to that is about getting buy-ins from potentially like pretty large groups of people. One thing I think a lot of DAOs that are really good DAOs are very focused in terms of like what they set the scope of their mission, their goal to be, which I think is different than a lot of businesses. You look at a lot of like, there's a lot of big corporations that just do everything, right? Like what is it, like GE does everything from like jet engines to like light switches to like, all sorts of, all sorts of stuff like that. And I think in traditional business, there's this push to kind of like, expand to be like a walled kingdom, to kind of keep expanding your territory, to kind of claim as much territory as possible. And so far, I hope this stays this way with kind of crypto and DAOs. It's much more of an open kind of collaborative ecosystem where I think it's great if DAOs and organizations are kind of more like focused on achieving one objective and having it be more of a network of a bunch of different DAOs operating with each other. We were talking about kind of CryptoStats and Bankless. Like what we're trying to do with CryptoStats, it's very like, we're not trying to do much. We're trying to be an API, right? Like that's not a whole lot. We're not trying to there's a lot of different parts of like the data ecosystem. There's like there's the indexing layer. That's something like the graph. That's like, this is a very kind of resource intensive process. And there's like the presentation layer, which is, communicating data to people. We're not really trying to do either of those, but I think, we've worked with the Graph Foundation a bunch. We've talked to Bankless DAO. So kind of all three of those DAOs are kind of three very like tightly defined DAOs that can leverage each other a bunch to kind of build something that altogether is much bigger.
That's interesting. It reminds me of like DeFi, you hear DeFi Legos, right? Where like, you build an exchange and then another company builds on top of that and like utilizes that exchange to do whatever they're going to do, loans or whatever. And it's like, they all build on top of each other. You're kind of talking the same thing, but instead of DeFi protocols, it's like DAOs or like businesses that are just kind of like all building and relying on each other. That's super interesting. I never thought of DAOs in that nature.
Yeah, that's what I think is the really cool thing for DAOs. And just like with DeFi, it tends to be the simplest and the most trustless ones that work really well. You see like Uniswap is a really simple, like, the code behind Uniswap is like, especially like, V1, V2 is like really simple code. Like anybody can build on top of Uniswap. And when you look at like, say DAO tooling, the DAO tooling that's taken off is usually the really simple ones. It's like Compound's framework and like Moloch DAO. There's a lot of projects that tried to build like really big governance systems, and actually like people want like small, like atomic little pieces of code or organizations or whatever that can build off each other.
I don't know if you've seen this, but what this makes you think of is like, I understand the DeFi Legos because there's no human really involved. It's like you're just connecting code to code. Connecting DAO to DAO there's trust because you're relying on the humans of that DAO. Have you seen any other DAOs that are doing this where like maybe they just exchange tokens and now all of a sudden you hold some of CryptoStats, DAO tokens in the treasury of, I don't know, whatever, another Graphs one or whatever. And like, is that the way that they would connect, or have you seen this at all? Or what were your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I know token swaps is like a thing that happens. I don't know how many like great examples off the top of my head, but I know theoretically the idea is if you have two DAOs that want to kind of like work together, or they're kind of aligned, that they'll do like a token swap where it's kind of, the nice thing is you're kind of like, you're not selling your tokens, like you both give tokens to the other one and neither one kind of sells, but you have kind of some stake over each other. So that's something that a lot of people have kind of, again, thought of at least. As I've mentioned, like we've worked with the Graph Foundation a bunch. So, we use the Graph a ton. We're very dependent on the Graph, and they've been very supportive of the project. And so they've like given us a small grant basically towards like signaling for some of our subgraphs to be there, and also towards subsidizing, with the decentralized version of the graph, you have to pay for queries. So they're basically going to subsidize, our queries for a while with
Interesting.
tokens. And, again, the goal is like, hopefully once we become kind of a more sustainable organization, we can just pay for them ourselves. But I think that's a good example of,
Right.
they're not really trying to give us like governance over the system, but they're trying to kind of provide some tokens to us in a way that we already find valuable, and
Right.
like strengthen that relationship. And I'm sure it's valuable for them for like to really strengthen this relationship, so that down, in the future, we're still like kind of using the graph for as much of our indexing as possible. So that's maybe another good example.
Super interesting. Okay, talking the token. So like CryptoStats DAO, you are eventually going to launch a token. You just mentioned like governance or different like reasons you would use a token. What is the plan, like utility? Like why does CryptoStats need a token? And like what would be the purpose of it? Is it just governance? Is it some sort of like currency or utility token, or what's the idea there?
Yeah, it'll be primarily governance token. So the goal of it will be, the goal of decentralizing this whole system is to give the trust in our data to the community, so that it's not dependent on me. It's not dependent on any individual to control what data gets included, because there is some subjectivity of like choosing what is the right way to calculate Uniswap's fees, for example.
Right.
So to give that to the community, and one way I think of it is like, there's different ways of like valuating, getting the value of a token. When you look at like DeFi tokens, a lot of people will do like discounted cash flows. When we launch, we're not going to have revenue, but one thing you can think of is how many tokens do you need to kind of change the governance? And one way you can even think of it is, I think it's a cool way of evaluating like kind of tokens in general is how much does it cost for you to like mess up the system? So like, if we look at like MakerDAO, like if you control like a controlling stake of MKR tokens, you can just print DAI. You can print all the DAI. You can potentially maybe steal some of the collateral, stuff like that. You can like really screw up MakerDAO if you have a lot of these tokens. So with enough of the kind of CryptoStats tokens, you'll be able to put in bad data, which doesn't have like economic damage, but it has massive like reputational damage, not only to CryptoStats, but to any organization that's depending on CryptoStats data. Like Bloomberg is already using some of our fee revenue data for some things. So it's like, how much do you need to, I'm sure there's someone who'd be willing, like, if it was really easy, someone would try to screw up the data that's listed on Bloomberg just for fun. So the question is, like, what is the threshold that you need to like screw up the data that's on Bloomberg, the data that's on the block, like all these websites? And again, like as it grows, every DAO and protocol kind of hopes to become more robust as it grows. So as we grow and we have more, websites that are using our data, we want to make sure it's like harder and harder to kind of get bad data inside of it. Just like Aave wants to make sure it's harder and harder to get bad collateral as into their system.
I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, David. Just bring it back for a second to, we talk a lot at Web3 Academy about coordination within a DAO and how to coordinate people. And so I just want to chat a little bit about how you've done that with CryptoStats. You mentioned the weekly call. What other methods or frameworks or activities have you guys done in order to coordinate the team?
Or tools?
Yeah. So again, this is definitely like an area we're still kind of sorting out. It's like definitely a transition to go from, kind of like doing everything as like just our core team, like every upgrade, every code change is like, just go, yeah, that's good. So we're trying to do, now to like use the Discord as much as possible. You can see most DAOs kind of like the main component of a DAO is honestly like the Discord for most DAOs, right? That's where everybody's communicating. That's where they're talking. That's where kind of proposals get kind of originally made before
the head office, right? It's headquarters.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, maybe the core of the DAO is like, the multi-sig or the on-chain contracts or something, but you said like the a company is not the CEO of a company. Like most of the company is the people who are walking around in the office, like chatting with each other and doing work. So yeah, so a lot of, just trying to put a lot of our process open on the Discord. Trying to, I guess one part of the transition is trying to have that openness. I think, again, like I talk to a lot of different DeFi projects that want to get something added or updated on CryptoStats, and trying to pull those conversations from a private conversation between me and some team members to go like, hey, actually, like, can we talk in our Discord, because we have a bunch of community members that would be, interested and can contribute. And I think that openness can be tough. I've talked to some people at MakerDAO as MakerDAO moved, like, transitioned from a company into a DAO. I think that can be like a little bit of a hard transition to, like, all of a sudden, like, all your business activity is now out in the open. So yeah, just doing that in the open. We have a forum. We'll have kind of like on-chain governance at some point. But yeah, that's where we're at so far. But it's definitely something that we're still spending a lot of time thinking about, like what processes to add, how can we make things more organized and structured, so that, part of making things more ordered and structured is that you can pass off responsibilities to different people without them needing like a lot of experience.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
still figuring it out.
So I think as we begin to wrap up, I think we're going to do a speed round and ask you a bunch of questions before we do wrap up. Jay will do that.
Oh, cool.
Let's have another question. I think you're one of the people that I know that are probably the most deep into crypto, just in general. I think like you live and breathe this stuff. So I kind of want to get your opinion here. When you're thinking of building out CryptoStats and continue to do this, are you looking to build this and integrate with like every single blockchain, every single application? Or do you look at like only certain ones for some reason? Do you wait until something like a blockchain has enough adoption to be like, okay, this one's legit, now I will go in there? Like, how do you think about that? Or how does maybe the community think about that? And then also maybe you can apply that to like, when you're going to build, you're going to launch a DAO with some tokens and stuff. Where are you going to do that? And what makes you decide that as well?
I mean, from a high level, like 100%, we want everything. We want every blockchain, every protocol, every DeFi, whatever, every DeFi metric. We want to have that and have it available. Now, one thing you mentioned, like there often does need to be some level of like spam prevention, right? If we listed every Uniswap fork on crypto fees, like there's thousands and thousands of Uniswap forks. So, we do have some criteria, things like, okay, you must be at least 6 months old. A lot of protocols, if a lot of protocols don't make it to 6 months. So that kind of like helps filter things out. The community will kind of have to like create this criteria. The other thing is, because we do want, CryptoStats to be as neutral of a protocol as possible. Trying to combine that neutrality with the need to do some curation, you can have kind of different types of, different sets of criteria for different collections. Say one example is we've been working with the team behind the, it's like the D4 index. It's one of the like index tokens that are on Index Co-op.
Yep.
And it's an index of like Web3 protocols. So things like, I guess Filecoin and LivePeer and things like that, things that are less financially oriented and more like Web3 infrastructure tokens. And they wanted to have like a collection that's fee revenue, but like kind of different criteria for being listed. So we've kind of worked with them. We've set up a separate collection that they can kind of manage. They can set their own criteria, things like that. So, I think that is a good model for CryptoStats going forward. Is this should be an open tool that anybody can kind of contribute to and kind of have their criteria. If you don't like the criteria that exists, either, you can talk to the community and see if we want to change it. And if we don't, maybe you can kind of fork it and make it your way. And, I think that forkability is a very underrated value and property of like things in crypto and blockchains. Forkability is what lets contentious issues kind of get sorted out by the market. Like we've seen that with like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. It was like big disagreement, so let's just have both, and there's one kind of clear winner.
Right.
Yeah. So I think embracing that is is something that we want to do, and that lets us again kind of be as all encompassing as possible while still having some levels of subjectivity.
Super cool. You ready for a speed round of questions? Or is there anything,
Let's do
I guess before that, is there anything else you want to say? Is there anything that, I don't know, is on your mind that you haven't expressed yet? And, or if people want to learn more about CryptoStats or you, where should they do such a thing?
Yeah, I'll do the shill. Yeah, so if you're interested in the stuff we've talked about, if you like data, if you like DeFi, whatever, come check out cryptostats.community is the website. Cryptostats.community/Discord is our Discord. Cryptostats _ is our Twitter. So kind of check all those out. Yeah, we'd love to kind of have anybody be a part of our community.
Amazing.
And yourself, where can they find you on Twitter?
Yeah, so I'm at DMIHAL, DMIHAL on Twitter. So yeah, come follow me there.
Awesome. Okay, well, before we wrap up, let's do a little speed round of questions.
Let's do it.
Okay, I'm gonna start with which event are you most looking forward to in 2022?
This is then probably DevCon in Bogota. Not only because so I've been in crypto, been in like the Ethereum ecosystem for a number of years, 4 or 5 years or something. I've never been to a DevCon, and so this will be my first DevCon, and it's also DevCon in one of my favorite countries, Colombia, which is where me and Kyle actually met. So I'm excited just to go back to Colombia. Excited to go to DevCon, see everybody. I think that's going to be super fun.
Nice.
I will also
Awesome.
be going to that because Colombia is amazing. And I hear DevCon is sweet. We haven't had a DevCon in like 2 years, so it'll probably be a super sweet one.
It's gonna be a banger.
What's the best thing you've purchased for under $100 recently?
Best thing I purchased for under $100.
It doesn't need to be in crypto. You got to specify that,
It
because everyone thinks it's
not-
in crypto.
Doesn't have to be an NFT.
Yeah. What did I buy? I mean, again, I was just in Colombia a couple of weeks ago, and I think my flight ticket down there was like $80. So I don't know if that counts.
That's great.
Getting a little repetitive, but that was definitely well worth the money.
Nice. Who's your favorite person to follow on Twitter?
Favorite person to follow on Twitter? There's so many great, trolls and shit posters out there. Gabriel Haynes is, I think, underappreciated. There's a lot of goofy, funny videos about crypto. It's good to have like some good, funny people. I think crypto Twitter can be a little too serious sometimes. Like the people who are willing to not take it too seriously and then to bring some positivity.
Nice. Weirdest DAO or NFT that you've heard about or seen? Most interesting, funniest. Let's go on this theme of keeping it light.
There's one, I don't even know if I want to say it. I don't know if this is like I've been getting some like spam DMs on Twitter from like the pooping ladies section.
I got this too. This guy messaged me so many times on Twitter. What is it called?
Yeah,
Pooping DAO? Pooping ladies DAO?
I didn't look very much into it, but I don't really want to. But at least got a good chuckle out of it. So yeah, that one. What are the other? Yeah, I don't know. That's the one that's coming to mind for some reason. But out of all the dumb DAOs and NFTs out there, that's the only one that stuck around.
Favorite book?
Favorite book? Oh man, I don't know if I have a good. Honestly, I'm not reading too much these days. I'm embarrassed to say it.
It's okay.
Yeah,
Can be an old book, something that you
or
that
newsletter
stuck with you when you were younger.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. I remember I really liked iRobot when I was a kid. After I saw the movie first, then read the book. Book completely different. So that's one that's kind of coming to mind. Yeah, I'll go with that one for now.
Nice. I love it. Awesome. Kyle, unless you have any other speed round questions you want to add in?
Nope,
Great.
I didn't think of any, but I wish I did now.
It's okay. It's my job. Well, David, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast and to learn more about CryptoStats. So excited to see where you guys take it in the future. It's amazing to see somebody so focused on public goods. We need more of that.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It's been awesome chatting with you guys, and I guess I'll see you all in Colombia.
I will be there. I'll see you in Portugal in the summer first, actually.
That's true. It'll be lots sooner.
All right. Thanks, David. Take care, everyone.
Take care, guys.
Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. By the way, if you've yet to join the Discord community, you are missing out. This is where all the magic happens. This is where we learn, where we ask questions, where we network. You want to be in there. The link to join is in the description below. And finally, a quick disclaimer. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.